Hey guys, this is the App to Game Show,
I'm Ryan.
I'm Chris.
and I'm Jason. And today we're just going to talk about some stuff, a lot of board game stuff, a lot of things that are happening in the community, some questions that I've seen in our little App to Game community on Facebook. First of all, talk about thematic games.
We'll get into D&D and looking for group, and we'll talk about maybe a bit of Super Mario Odyssey, and then some legacy stuff.
Cool.
Sure.
Okay, let's talk about themes in games. The idea is brought up because of The Gallerist, which I consider a theme-heavy game. But that is one that's just been flying off the shelves, like you got it.
Yeah,
Revealed it that day.
I posted it on the Facebook community, and I think 5 minutes later somebody sent me a message saying they wanted to buy it and to put it on hold for them. You know, I think it's a heavy game with a great theme. The price point was really good. I think just a magic combination of everything together.
So when we talk about a game like The Gallerist, you hear stuff, the game takes forever to play. There's so many millions of strategies, and it's a really heavy game. A lot of people like that, though. The theme is what really attracts me to the game, so I would be willing to put aside any of my issues with things like long gameplay or heavy rules if the theme's great. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for me, Leaving Earth is just like that. It's a great little space game. It plays really well solo, but I love the theme so much. It's like the 50s, 60s space race, and you're just trying to complete missions in space. But it's just the theme is just so great that the rules seem cumbersome and they're hard for me. I struggle through actually trying to understand how to play the game, but I keep trying over and over because I like the theme so much.
What about you?
Games like Viticulture or Scythe are themed really well. Scythe takes place in an alternate European history. The art is just amazing. The way the mechanics are tied into the theme really helps. Viticulture is a wine-making game, and just everything that you do in the game makes you feel like you're making wine. It's really cool.
I really enjoy Viticulture also. I think it's a great theme. You can talk about like thematic games. Like there's a whole Star Wars series of games that everybody always flocks to because everybody loves the Star Wars brand. Whenever anything is new is released for X-Wing or any kind of like Star Wars Monopoly, even things like that are released, people flock to it.
Like a reskin where you theme something. And do you think they're just trying to cash in on the theme on that, or?
Sometimes I think they are.
I think
totally are.
Sorry, Monopoly, but I think anytime they reskin that to me is a serious theme grab.
Right, like Monopoly Gamer came in, and I haven't played it, but I've heard the gameplay is not the greatest. It's Monopoly after all, but it flew off the shelf because it's Nintendo themed.
It's not Monopoly though. It's quite a bit different from Monopoly. It plays with
so it's more than just a reskin.
Monopoly Gamer, yeah. I mean, it's the gameplay is a little more juvenile, so it's great for kids and younger people. But the theme is great, but it doesn't play the same as Monopoly.
The Monopoly theme itself isn't that bad, really. I kind of like the idea of being a developer, back in that era. What is it, 1920s or something like
30s,
that?
I think,
30s. Yeah. It's interesting. I used to know the story about it back then, but now I can't handle the gameplay, the mechanics. It's not good enough for me to want to ignore the boringness of roll and move and then all that crazy chance.
I think Monopoly was a great game in its time, and I think it blazed the trail for many other great games to follow.
No, you're right though. Monopoly did have its time. It was probably really interesting at the time it was brought out. Might have even been something new, but I think for me, not even the theme can save that one for me. Kind of like this zombie theme for everything has ruined a lot of stuff for me. Like I won't even try Zombicide, even though lots of people seem like that's a great game. Anything that has been, I just noticed years ago, everything started getting this zombie theme to it. It's really just starting to bug me, like Pride, Prejudice, and zombies, and then everything. It's just, oh my gosh, come on, this is.
It's
an oversaturation.
Marrying Mr. Darcy, the undead expansion. Yeah.
And everything has some. Well, not everything. I mean, I guess the Cthulhu theme is an easy reskin. I mean, even Smash Up makes fun of that with the obligatory Cthulhu, whatever. But I mean, Pandemic Cthulhu was amazing.
Yeah, I've actually heard good things about that. I haven't played it, but
I've played it, and it's it's different enough from Pandemic that it's actually still pretty interesting. But I mean, if you've played out Pandemic, or Forbidden Island and Forbidden Desert, all those kind of role games like that by the same guy,
I think a big difference between Zombies and Cthulhu, or the whole H.P. Lovecraft series, is that Zombies are like really mainstream, really in your face. You know, they're on every show. But Cthulhu is more like a board game specific theme, where like the board game industry has really adopted the theme and kind of like you said with Smash Up with the obligatory Cthulhu set. You know, the board game community really embraces the Cthulhu theme. I know there's lots of people that, you know, hate it. They just want nothing to do with Cthulhu.
Fair enough.
It's more like a cult classic
Yeah.
kind of thing than an actual mainstream.
And they say Cthulhu, but really Cthulhu is just one of the elder gods or ancient ones that H.P. Lovecraft wrote about, right? There's lots of different flavors of the H.P. Lovecraft or Lovecraftian universe that
the mythos. But the one nice thing about it is it's public domain, so you can slap it onto anything you want, and you're pretty good. I mean, you can't really do that with Lord of the Rings, which Lord of the Rings, I don't care what it is, I'm buying it. I'm just throwing money at it. It could be Lord of the Rings Monopoly. Well, okay, no, not Lord of the Rings Monopoly. But, you know, it's one of those things that you just get so into. I love this theme so much, I don't care what it is. Like, I've never played X-Wing or anything like that, but it reminds me of those mini games that I played. The ships look awesome. The theme's going to be great, but, I mean, am I that into Star Wars where I'm willing to overlook any of those mechanical issues? Maybe not necessarily with Star Wars, but definitely Lord of the Rings. And back to Pandemic Cthulhu, I think that added a real great mood to the game, and it really boosted Pandemic's replayability with me. But
I really enjoy games that kind of throw back to history. Speaking of Pandemic, the Pandemic
Iberia?
Yeah, Pandemic Iberia, that's right.
Oh my gosh, I really want to get that one.
It's based on real diseases, right? So
yeah, well, and it's a great... What is the era there? Was that the Spanish Civil War or something?
Something like that, yeah. With
that whole time period is like I think what is that, Hemingway and stuff like that. You know, some of those is really thematic. Throughout all the reviewers online, it's pretty much got rave reviews.
It's too bad that there was a limited edition. I can't get that anymore.
But what a great way to extend the life of a game, though, by providing a thematic reboot that isn't just a Monopoly reskin, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, even in those Monopoly reskins, they try to introduce some little mechanics and stuff, but it's not enough. But I mean, again, with Pandemic or Iberia and Cthulhu, fantastic. Like, it's a really, really excellent way to extend the life of a game franchise, I guess, or whatever. Anyway.
Yeah.
If you guys have a favorite theme, write it below.
Doobly-doo. Oh, wait, no, below the doobly-doo.
Comment section.
My doobly-doo has been revoked.
As usual, there are no ads in front of my D&D videos. I make no money off of this YouTube channel. If you want to help support the channel, come by my Amazon page. There's a link in the doobly-doo. I am an independent fantasy author. I've written 2 fantasy novels.
We're back. Yay.
Yeah.
I hope you enjoyed our commercial break there. No? Shut up.
Anyway, we're talking about like Pandemic. It's a great reskinnable game. You can add a lot of themes to it, like we have the Cthulhu Pandemic, the Pandemic Iberia. But speaking of Pandemic as a series or other legacy games, you know, there's lots of games out there that seems to be a new mechanic these days with the legacy format, where you start a game and then it changes in a permanent way when you finish the game.
Yeah, I first heard about that with Risk Legacy, and when my friend was telling me, hey, you got to try this game. You play a whole bunch of sessions of Risk with slightly different scenarios, and then you're trashing cards. You're changing stuff. You're writing on the board or whatever, putting stickers down, and I was just, what happens to the game after? It's like, it's played out. It's wrecked. It's no good anymore after.
Well, in Risk specifically, what they say is that once you're done with all the legacy portions of the game, then you have a very unique version of Risk that you can play over and over.
Okay, well, that's interesting. I didn't know about that, but the part of me that won't throw away old or boxes or anything like that, or won't buy the new sets that help you organize things. I got to keep everything original in my games. That horrifies me. That whole legacy aspect, like tearing cards.
This is a complaint I hear very often. Is I don't want to pay $60, $70, $80 for a game that I'm going to play once and throw away.
It's not even that for me, though. I have something mentally wrong with me. I just can't do that. I can't.
Well, there's a lot of things mentally wrong
my games.
with you.
Well, we know that, but thanks.
I didn't mean that. That was just,
very nice.
just teasing
We're cutting
Crisco.
this. Yeah, I just...
People have a hard time ripping up cards, defacing their games, wrecking components. So yeah, like not only the playing a game through once, but also damaging game components or permanently changing the game in any way. Then I feel that people have a... I don't know if it's just a mental hurdle about changing what the artist or the designer had in mind. This is their game that they made. Why would I want to change it? But what you have to realize is that that's part of the game. That's part of the experience, is to change the game.
Yeah, and I guess watching that evolution of the...
There's games that are kind of addressing that as well, like Gloomhaven, where it has that kind of an aspect to it where you're the decisions that you make have consequences later in the game through adding cards to decks and building up your character's stats and equipment that you can take from game to game. First Martians does that as well. And then there's games like the upcoming Charterstone, where at the end you're going to have a unique replayable worker placement game, but the actual board is pretty plain. So you're putting stickers and stuff on the board, but there's nothing really outstanding about the board in the first place, right? The whole point. The whole point is to build it.
Go.
Exactly. Right?
Well, that was one of the criticisms of Seafall, though, was there was no life to the game from the beginning, and it just continued that way for the whole thing. But you think a little differently.
I haven't got into Seafall yet, but I'd really like to, because just for my old game group, they play Seafall on their own. And they tell me that, it was slow to build up, but it turned into such an amazing game for them. I haven't heard a lot of feedback. Many people actually can't get past the initial slow build up to the game. So Seafall is one of those, I think, sleepers that people don't know about too much.
And that's another one of those kind of theme things where I'm really on the fence. I love the whole theme of Seafall. Am I willing to put up with a few boring scenarios to get going on it? And it's not really that expensive of a game when you think about it, for how much you get out of it, but then
the problem is that you need to have 2 to 4 people that actually want to go through all that slow build up and stick through it and actually get to the good parts.
Well, that's one of the things about campaign and legacy games. You need to find a dedicated group like that will show up, will play it all the time, or you're stuck. And I've got friends that have played Pandemic Legacy even, and they just didn't get as regular as they were to the table with it, and it's now kind of lost in this mid-legacy limbo, and they're not that interested in coming back to it because they've forgotten some of the things they've done, and it really just, they didn't find the people who were into it.
I had a very similar experience with Pandemic Legacy. I had a game group that we would get together every week or every other week to go through, but then we moved away. So trying to get the game with a new group of people halfway through the season was difficult. We tried once and it just didn't go well. It felt cumbersome and confusing for the new people, and it didn't feel right for us. We'd been through halfway through the story, and now we're trying to explain the mechanics of the game to these new people, and we just never got back to it, never finished it.
But that kind of highlights another problem, especially for people in Edmonton, where a lot of people move to this town mostly for work, that sort of thing, and the lovely winters that we have, and that sort. But people come here, they leave friends behind. They want to play these games. You need to looking for a group, basically, and where do you find people to play with? Well, your friendly local game store, or
this is a great place to find new groups. Like every Tuesday night, we have a Teach Me Tuesday. We call it Teach Me Tuesday, but really it's just a chance to play games. And we have an increasing turnout every week. People that are just trying to get out, and maybe their family doesn't enjoy games, or we actually have a lot of people that I've met. Their families, they're board gamers, and they're very extreme hobbyists, not extreme hobbyists, but active hobbyists. but their family doesn't play, so they try to find different groups, and we have a lot of drop-ins here that just like to hang out and play games, and we're starting to see some regular faces.
Yeah, I think that's a great thing, especially I moved here a few years ago. I didn't know anybody. I lucked out just happening to meet a few people on site who played games, and every now and then when their shifts our shifts align with days off and stuff, we'll get together and play some games. But had I not known them, I would have been kind of stuck. I'm kind of like a cat person. I can be outgoing when I need to be, but I like to just
Hermit up.
pet me with your eyes.
That's actually how I met Ryan. Ryan used to teach games at our Teach Me Tuesday.
Oh, yeah?
Well, still does teach games at our Teach Me Tuesday every week. Yeah. You'll meet all sorts of people and expand your game group and expand your group of friends that you can play with. And now people have met here that are now gaming on their own outside of the store.
Exactly. You might not like the whole group you meet on Teach Me Tuesday because you might not get enough time to really get to know anybody, but all you need to do is meet one person, and then they might have a few other people too. And then suddenly you're in a gaming group. I mean, I met one person at work, and then suddenly I had actually 2 gaming groups of different work people. It was really interesting. This one I played D&D with, and this one I played strictly board games with. And it's really strange meeting these different people, being a cat person, like I said, and then having to learn all their quirks and stuff like that. But after the first couple of D&D sessions or whatever, you get over it, and it becomes really fun. You look forward to going and all that sort of thing. It's no longer something to be worried or anxious about or anything. But when you were to come in here on a Teach Me Tuesday or something, the nice thing is there's so much going on. You can really just maybe click with one person or something, and that could be enough to start it off.
I had a similar story. I just kind of knew of somebody. We didn't really hang out. We just frequented the same place, and he found out that I was kind of into board games. And at the time, it was just Settlers of Catan, Dominion, and my kids were still young. It was just, I had a small 20 game collection, and he invited me out to his game group, and that is compared to what I have now.
I know.
He invited me out to his game group that he wasn't even really attending anymore, just because he knew I liked games, and I still game with them now. And it's just like you said, one person, and you can really get into a pretty tight group.
And that's the thing. Like, it really gets tight. Like, I got really attached to these 2 groups of people that, I didn't really know them that well at work, except, sometimes we would bring a couple board games to camp, and then it was really odd making that transition. Hey, we're not in a work setting, and I'm hanging out with these people. I was really, what the heck is going on here? This is too close to, whatever.
That's actually the same for me. I've actually met a couple customers that came in, and we now hang out outside of the store.
Yeah.
Turning from customer vendor relationship to friend relationship, it's an interesting transition, and I'm really enjoying it. We hang out, we play board games, we play Time's Up or Time Stories or
Spot It.
Oh, Spot It. Spot It's a great game, very thematic.
It nails the round tin theme.
Moving on.
But that's the thing. You really do get tight. I'm tight with my original D&D group from, back in the 90s. When I moved away, we all moved away and spread out over Western Canada, but we didn't start playing again until kind of recently when we all got fantasy grounds or whatever. But we just clicked right back into our group, and that kind of thing. But that's kind of the next point. What was it, Jason McNeil from the App Game
Jason
community?
McNeil and the App Game community actually posed a really good question. How do you find a new group? And I think he specifically mentioned D&D.
Yeah, for D&D, how do you take a new group and get them all together going on D&D? I guess D&D was a new thing for him and his few players. And some of the questions or some of the responses were pretty well thought out and ranged from everything like everybody should get a copy of this and this at the very least to what I endorse is just getting the starter set if you want to play 5th edition. There was even a question, well, what about Pathfinder and that sort of thing? I'll get to that in a second, but I think with the starter edition box, you get a decent adventure, you get a couple of good characters, and you get some dice. You get everything basically you need to get the game rolling. And there's enough of the basic rules in there to run the entire adventure. And one of the best things I think about that adventure, the Lost Mine of Phandelver, I think it's called, is you actually get to a point in it once you're finished the adventure that if you want to keep going with these characters, it lets you continue off. There's a few spots in some of the larger published adventure campaigns like Storm King's Thunder where it says, hey, if you brought your characters in from Lost Mine of Phandelver, here's a good starting point to insert them, and here's a hook. So they have that kind of interoperability, I guess, between the
transition phase. Yeah.
Exactly, the hooks, the transitions between this intro campaign to some of the more developed campaigns, the larger ones. And it's such a quick way to get started on it. I think that if you were to go buy a bunch of books and find you didn't like this, you might get burned on hundreds of dollars. Whereas if you were to buy, if everybody even pitched in on the starter set, you're only out a few dollars each. I think it's only
$22 on that. Yeah.
But it's really cool. It's nice to have a box set and everything like that. You get started really easy with it, and like I said, the adventures just fold straight into some of the larger campaigns. So if you want to keep going with it, and then you can start buying some of the bigger books, such as the 3 Core, which is the player's book, the Dungeon Master's Guide, and the Monster Manual. All awesome books, lots of stuff, lots of material in there that you don't even need to buy a campaign book to keep going if you're particularly creative as a dungeon master. And then there's Pathfinder. And Pathfinder's been going for years, and because of the way Paizo, I think it is, acquired the license to it, it's like a D&D between 3rd edition and 4th edition. So it's a couple editions back, but it's been constantly worked on. So it doesn't feel out of date.
I don't really know anything about the Pathfinder series, but I've heard maybe it's a little more simplified than D&D.
It depends. I think 5th edition is a heck of a lot more simple than 3.5, which is kind of what Pathfinder jumped off. But I mean, it depends on your play style. Pathfinder is kind of an older rule set that a lot of people were upset that had been replaced by 4th, because they didn't think it was time to replace this yet. Because 3rd and 3.5, they had all addressed all sorts of glaring issues with the old Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, which were, I find quirky and fun and interesting, but some people just couldn't live with it. Like bizarre math calculation for every to hit roll. THACO was one thing they used to call it. And you'd roll, and then it was kind of this reverse of what you're able to... Anyway, it just got a little convoluted. 3rd edition addressed all that. 3rd edition brought in interesting things like feats, streamlined some of the characters. It was a lot easier, I think, than the original editions, but I think 5th overall is more easy compared to Pathfinder. But the thing that's awesome about Pathfinder is it isn't just this system that was lost when D&D abandoned it. It has been developed over the years. They have a staggering amount of information if you're one of those kind of players or dungeon masters that really likes to get immersed in all the campaign world info and all that.
I know there's
sort
lots
of
of different adventure paths available.
There's tons of adventure paths.
Pathfinder has its own starter box too, if you want to do that.
There's so many cool little add-ons to it, but you can keep it as simple as you want, right? So, I mean, you can either invest in a shelf full of stuff, or you're going to be just fine with a couple of the core rule books.
Yeah, for sure.
Anyway, something I'd like to get into again.
I like seeing these starter boxes, actually. The Pathfinder, the D&D, the Star Wars role-playing game. They all have the nice starter boxes that kind of include everything you need, including all the dice that you need.
For 20-ish bucks.
Yeah.
And you're up and running, and if you like it, it's not like you've wasted money on it, because it's still useful, and hey, you still get some dice.
That's right.
I think a lot of people find it daunting to take on the role of a GM or DM.
Yeah.
Haven't really been into role playing very much. I tried 13th Age once. I was with an experienced game master. Do these boxes have resources for somebody to work on being a game master and actually becoming comfortable with interacting with people in a fluid way?
There's usually some kind of hints and stuff like that, saying that would explain how the DM should lay something out. They usually have a brief synopsis, so you get an idea of what's going to happen. And as the DM plays, you should always kind of read a little bit ahead, but not. There's so many different ways to consider preparing and being a dungeon master. I think I was surprised when I watched one of Matt Colville's podcasts. He's a he's a pretty popular dungeon master on YouTube. He talks a lot about playing the game, but when he revealed the way he prepares for the game, I couldn't believe it, because he is so well. He's ready for anything in these games when you see him play and stuff like that. And he basically just reads a little bit ahead each time. He doesn't read the whole thing, he says, And so, but then there's people like me. I got to read the whole darn thing. I got to do this. But it's nice in the adventures. They'll tell you what you should be prepared for. Little things that if this happens, then this is likely a reaction from this person. All sorts of stuff. There's like a decent little. It's a lifeline, I guess, sometimes for some new DMs. But I mean, you can also go to the D&D website Wizards has, and they've got their Dragon magazine download that you can look at on iPad and all that sort of stuff. And there's always tips and stuff like that. Reddit, D&D, tons of tips, tons of people talking about stuff like that. There's tons of ways to get info, but they usually throw you a bit of a hook there in the games, especially in the larger campaigns.
If you're trying to find a D&D group in the city, actually, the Facebook has a decent group. I think it's called the Dungeons and Dragons Edmonton chapter. There's lots of people on there looking for groups, or even DMs looking for players.
Oh, even Kijiji. People are like LFG spamming everything these days, just to try to find other people to play with. I know of guys. I haven't met these guys personally, but I've seen them. They're dungeon masters for hire. They're offering their services. If you have a group of people, and like you said, your group, nobody really wants to take the reins as a dungeon master, because it is an extra investment in time and everything. You can contact one of these people, and they'll come and set it all up for you and get you going. Maybe that's all you need to just get comfortable enough with the game, or I mean, you're with friends usually, so they can be they can make fun of you when you screw things up, but then you just spawn a Tarrasque, and then who's laughing now, and that's it.
I tried to be a DM once, and it was not for me. I tried to. I read the thing and planned the whole campaign and drew the maps and everything, and then
That's fun. I love that.
As soon as one character strays off the path, I had no idea what to do. I wasn't a quick thinker. It was a bad experience. But my friends, they put up with it. They went through the campaign with me, and then I just never DM'd again. It was great.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. You can prepare as much as you like, and the players are gonna. It doesn't matter what the book offers you in terms of bailing you out of a weird situation, or what you've prepared for. The players will find some way to do something different, and then you're tearing your hair out, and you kill them with something big and start over, or you figure it out.
Yeah. Alternately, one thing that I found, I've played quite a bit, is the Pathfinder's Adventure card game. It's kind of an intermediary step between like a board type game and an RPG. It has definite RPG feel to it, but it's self-managed, so you don't need a DM.
That's cool. There's a lot of those games where you cooperate or whatever, as opposed to that descent model with the one overlord versus everybody. Like Arcadia Quest, you all join and that sort of thing. And those are awesome gateway to RPGs, I think, because you get this really cool theme. You get this cooperate, because generally as a group of D&D players or 13th Age or whatever, you're working together, that sort of thing. So you get the same kind of idea. You get that awesome theming of it. That Pathfinder world is so dense and rich with detail and theme and that sort of stuff. So that's something I haven't actually played yet. I should actually play that before I get into the Pathfinder RPG tabletop and just see what it's like. But you were talking about 13th Age. I don't really know anything about that. What you said, there's something kind of, it's like a little less dice clatter and a little more working on the story or something?
Yeah, it's a lot more story driven than Dungeons and Dragons from what I've heard. I haven't played a lot of D&D, and I got into 13th Age because that's what one of my friends who wanted to start a group with me was already into. But
there you go.
It's it focuses more on the story. So if you fail at a roll, then you're not necessarily going to fail at the task. You might fail into a convenient or weird success, as opposed to just you fail and now bad stuff happens all the time. Everything that you do goes to further the story and the characters. There's like I said, I haven't played D&D, but as far as 13th Age is concerned, there's you roll dice in battle, and if you want to succeed at a task in the regular world where you're not in combat, it's just a single roll, and one of the unique ways they facilitate this is at the beginning during character creation. Your character gets what are called background points. So I think you start with 8 background points, and you can have as many different backgrounds as you want and sink in these points into those backgrounds. So if I'm a thief, I could have my background could be, I spent my days pickpocketing rich people on the street in order to survive. So I can use that in a situation given to me by the DM in order to give a bonus to my roll.
No, that's cool.
So
as long as you're role playing essentially.
Exactly, and that's
following
what it
your
is.
character backgrounds, you can. They kind of have
Right.
something like that in 5th edition D&D, but it's really simplified. If you're role playing to your background and your character that you've created, and you're following, oh well, this guy was a poor kid living in the streets. There's no way he would know how to interact with some rich nobles, right? So you play the buffoon who kind of ruins the social atmosphere of something by just being, just
Yourself.
total faux pas and being yourself. Okay, cool. Well, the DM rewards you with what's called, darn it, what is it? You get this little star. I'm thinking about it in Fantasy Grounds, and I always tell the players that I'm playing with, okay, click your star. They get it. Inspiration, that's what it was.
Okay.
And inspiration, what it does, it gives you a bonus in the game. You get to roll 2 dice instead of 1, and you get to pick the best. You get to pick the best die. Oh, a customer here just came in with a Wayland Yutani shirt.
Nice.
Awesome. Just watch the
But
anime.
yeah, the backgrounds are also a way in 13th Age for the player to interact with the game master and actually make some make part of the story themselves.
Well, and it's good to reward your players for following, because when you make a character, you're creating part of that story.
Yeah.
And if you depart from that and you do this and that, and you play this bold paladin who just is totally antithetical to the idea of a paladin without a good reason. That might be cool sometimes, but anyway, if you're playing something and you're not playing it properly, it kind of ruins stuff. I mean, if you're playing somebody who's supposed to be lawful good and he's killing hobos for their, they might have a copper or something.
Can you lose inspiration points?
Well, not really, but I mean, the DM should find ways in the story
Consequences.
to have consequences. There are some mechanics, and I'm sure the paladin would start to lose this. But what I'm trying to say is it's nice to have a way to reward somebody for playing their character properly. And by properly, I mean that contributes to the story.
When you talk about 13th Age, that actually reminds me a lot, or it feels a little very similar to the Star Wars role-playing game, which Mark has been hosting in the store over the past couple months. I'm just new to it. I'm just learning the whole system, but it feels very narrative. It feels like you have whenever you have a task to do, you choose your way to conquer the task, and you roll for success or fail.
Yeah.
And you can succeed, or you could succeed with a failure element, or you could fail with a success element. It's really narrative. It feels really less dependent on the dice and more dependent on the story. Your characters might die, but not really die, and it's actually very hard to kill a character in the Star Wars RPG.
When you rely too much on dice, I think it can really destroy the flow of the story. Especially when you're relying on dice for things that, for instance, I had this really wimpy wizard with a 7 strength, so he had like a penalty on anything physical or trying to hit stuff, and he got really mad at the ranger, and the ranger shoved him, so I decked him because I rolled a 20, which is an automatic, awesome, super rad hit. But that should have never happened in real life. That here's this big Aragorn dude, and here's this little wimpy, that should have just bounced off his jaw. But anyway,
Yeah, maybe he got a lucky hit and
even a
went
lucky
into
hit,
his
though,
eye.
it just ruined the whole I mean, it kind of
But that's
worked, I
where
thought,
the-
but I mean, we all had to stop and question what's going on, and
That's where the god powers of the DM take over, right?
Yeah.
You roll 20, the DM can just say, that's not okay.
but you need to be wary of that as a DM, because you don't want to be vetoing somebody's role. Like, I wouldn't have cared so much myself, but other players might have actually really been upset
but
if
he
you had
could-
said, no, that's ridiculous.
Well, he could mitigate it by saying, yeah, your punch lands squarely in his jaw, but because you're so weak, it does no damage.
Well, yeah, that's the thing, and you really need to understand the group you're playing with in order to do that sort of stuff, because you might really just make everybody hate you and not let you DM anymore after that or whatever. But
Yeah.
but
Well, I was just gonna say something like that happens in something like 13th Age, right? You might not do any damage because that doesn't make sense story-wise, but it might inspire the rest of your crew, and so the GM will give you
Inspiration.
inspiration.
It depends on how you
plus
look at it,
one
right?
in combat to certain roles or something like that, right? So
Yeah, maybe
Ego boost.
maybe
Yeah.
maybe you could have looked at it as a situation like, oh, you stood up to a bully. Here's a, whatever.
David and Goliath point.
Yeah, right, exactly. But then there's other games. This goes way back. Is Rollmaster, and they're a company that put out or Iron Crown Enterprises put out this Rollmaster system. And if you took it too literally, you were rolling for everything. You're rolling to get off your horse. You're rolling to do this. You're rolling, and it had a fascinating critical system that was really deep. You could chop off an arm or whatever, but it also had an equally fascinating fumble system. So if you get off your horse and mess up, if you just keep rolling terrible critical dice, you break your neck and you're dead. And it all just boils down to how the DM mitigates all that and what they want the story to be. And if something like a 20 comes up, you don't necessarily cancel it. You find a clever way, like you guys were saying.
Well, the whole thing about an RPG is the RPG aspect, right?
Yeah.
You're trying to role play your character, role play the game. You're not trying to just say, "Oh, I want to do this. Can I?" Yes. Can
Yeah.
I? No.
Well, exactly. And now if you're just clattering dice all the time, it just kind of takes something out of it.
Takes
And
the
like
roleplay
you're talking
aspect out
about,
of it.
there goes the story. Now it's just
Yeah.
a series of rolls. But D&D, TSR tried to do away with dice in one of their systems a long time ago. And I think it was called Dragonlance Saga Rules or something like that. And you were basically just booklets for the D&D, or for the DM, explained some situations, and everybody had their characters and things they were able to do, and I think there was actually no dice at all in it. And I still think dice are fun. It's fun to miss, it's fun to hit, it's fun to get that critical.
It
And
gives you that gambling feeling,
when
right?
when you rely too much on them, I think 13th Age has an interesting take on it, where let's promote the story rather than just throw dice all the time. And I think you can get away with playing D&D like that too, depending
Yeah,
on
I
the group.
feel like what
On the
you
group.
were describing is what I was hearing about D&D in the past. But what you're describing about Fifth edition,
Fifth edition.
is that they're kind of addressing that and,
It's
taking
yeah.
the dice a little more out of it. But
And again, no matter what you do, if you're a certain type of group, you can just change all that anyway. You can take the dice right out of it, or just throw tons of dice in it. Doesn't matter what game, pretty much. So again, it just boils down to the kind of group you play with, I guess. And
You might go through a few different groups before you find one that you're really comfortable with.
Yeah.
You want to find people that have the same ideas about role playing that you do. If you get into a group that disagrees with how you think the role playing should go, then the game is not going to go very smoothly.
no, I totally agree. And that's why Teach Me Tuesdays are so awesome.
Yeah, it's great to have a temporary group that you can kind of try people out and
Exactly. You don't have a commitment to them at all. You just need to drop in and, I want to play whatever, and hopefully
Yeah.
it's something you're interested that night, and then you just drop in. That's yeah. I wish I had that back in the day. We'll cut that out. So what's coming out that people have been looking forward to? I know the app to game community, there's a lot of people asking about whether some restocks are coming in, but there's also been some questions about new releases and stuff, and I think you also mentioned something about Super Mario Odyssey.
yeah, I think for video games, the Switch has been great. People love it.
Yeah.
One of the most hottest games that was out for the Wii was Super Mario Galaxies.
Mm-hmm.
Its successor is Super Mario Odyssey, and it's supposed to be like where I just saw a brief video of it where Mario can cast his hat onto creatures and then
take them over.
basically possess them.
Yeah.
And you then control that creature with your Mario hat on and use that creature's abilities to complete your tasks or complete your missions.
Well, the idea is the hat itself is its own character. It's this character that aligns with Mario for whatever reason.
Well, the hat is possessed by another character.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay. And yeah, he can do a number of different attacks with it by whipping it off, and it circles around. It just destroys everything around it. Or you can do that special move you're talking about and take control of. One video I saw was the bullets. Flying out.
Bullet
It's
Bill?
kind of cool to see
Yeah.
those in the 3D because
The
they don't just go.
Bullet Bill
they
with the
seek
Mario
you.
mustache. And
Yeah, they seek you, and then you chuck your hat at them, and you can ride on them, and they'll take you to certain parts of the map you can't normally get to.
Yeah.
Really cool. Or you can smash parts of the map and
Yeah,
find the moves.
I think it's a
and
cute
stuff.
mechanic that they're introducing.
Yeah.
It should be actually really fun to play.
When I first saw it, I was thinking like, right on, he's got a powerful hat. Or they're really digging, aren't they? But then you start watching the videos, and you just it's Mario. It's infectious. Is there a bad Mario game really? I can't think of one. I haven't
I
played
have
them all.
Mario
but
2 with the whole pull and vegetable.
That was
Oh,
my
I enjoyed
favorite.
that one. I
Really?
enjoyed
That was
one.
my favorite
Yeah.
Mario game. I
Yeah.
loved that. I
I don't
love
know
being
if it was
able to
my favorite,
pull
but I
those and
enjoyed
throw
it.
them.
I wasn't
The
very good at it.
dream theme of it was
Yeah.
so I loved it, and the weird staging or whatever with the curtains and stuff.
I don't know.
There was something about it. I
that one-
liked it better than 3.
Dinosaur that blew the eggs at you, that was the
Mm.
worst thing ever.
Isn't that like some Yoshi thing or something?
Yeah,
I don't know.
Birdo.
Birdo,
that's
yeah,
right.
like,
He
geez,
had to like
that's
ride
going
the
back.
eggs, and man, it was horrible.
I love
Jump
that.
on the eggs, pick them
Yeah,
up, and
pick
throw
it
them
up.
back. Yeah.
I just like being able to carry those vegetable things for a while and just whip
Yeah.
them when you need them, and I don't know.
Onions.
Yeah, the game was good. I just wasn't
Onions,
good at
yeah,
it.
no, it was great, but
No, Mario games are great, and the great thing about Mario games is that they're really good for the new gamer, people that aren't really gamers per se,
yeah,
but people that are just getting into video games in general. Right, my wife does not like video games, but she used to play Super Mario Brothers back in the day because it's so easily accessible. It's
Yeah.
so simple to learn. You pick up and button mash, and you're doing great.
yeah, you can button mash, and but it also will reward people who are a little more dexterous and able to
Make the
do
jumps.
a couple combos and make the jump sequences and get to places, or just even creative enough to think of ways to get out to stuff. But yeah, I don't know. I think that'd be interesting. That's definitely. I was on the fence about the Switch, but now I think there's enough stuff, especially with the new Mario, that I think I would grab
The
it.
Switch is such an interesting console. I wasn't really sold on it, but then I've had a few friends that have played it, and some people have brought it into the store. And the fact that you can play it in your hands and then pop it into the little hub thing, and then it goes in your TV, and you continue playing. You can slide the controllers off, and now you have two controllers that two different people can play on. It's such a cool modular concept.
Yeah, it still has
very
like that
versatile.
party aspect,
Yeah.
sort of, with like being able to just chuck somebody a controller and do your things, but
Yeah.
but it's not 480p, So I had a Wii up until our last one broke last year, so I mean the 480p thing didn't bug me
Yeah.
too much. So
The Wii U is great. It's all 1080p.
yeah, the Wii U, but we couldn't find a Wii U. We were gonna upgrade to a Wii U a few months ago. Like, yay, way to be real behind. But I couldn't find one for sale new anywhere. I was seeing them all over Kijiji, but I just kind of didn't want to grab anybody else's greasy Wii U. And
We got ours at Kijiji. It was like $200, and we got the Wii U and a bunch of games. And it was
yeah, well, I was seeing them all for crazy prices, and I was just, how long is this going to last? Because
Well,
we've
now-
gone through
now
a
you got
couple
the
Wii's
Switch.
with our kids. So, but the
Yeah.
Switch looks really neat.
I think the Switch really stays true to Nintendo's form with the party aspect and
Yeah.
the new gamer aspect.
So do you think they got it
Yeah.
back then? After all the Wii the Wii was really niche,
Yeah,
I
I'm
guess,
seeing
or-
people coming in and buying Switch stuff that they said they haven't played a Nintendo product in a long time since the
Yeah.
GameCube.
Yeah, oh wow, the GameCube was amazing.
Yeah,
What was my favorite GameCube game?
Metroid Prime was pretty damn
Oh
good.
yeah. Mine was this Silicon Knights game, I think it was. Darn it, who did that? Eternal Darkness, that's what it was called.
Do you know what I fell in love with?
What?
Animal Crossing.
Animal Crossing?
Yeah,
Was that a pet collection kind of game or something like
it
that?
was like you get your little house, you can decorate it. You have to go find the decorations in the world, go fishing. You could take your memory card out.
It's
and
like
put
a Harvest Moon kind of thing.
So it was
yeah.
just a colossal waste of time.
It was a total colossal waste of time. I loved it. It was great.
But it looked cool and
It was cool.
had
It,
atmosphere.
if you got up at 9 o'clock on a Saturday, you could go to the thing and you see the dog playing music.
It had theme.
It had
You were
theme.
willing to put up with that because
Yeah.
of the theme.
Yeah, it was so silly and pointless that it was great. It was a great waste of time.
That's Starbound to me right now. It's like Terraria, but you just dig stuff up and build things and go explore. The story doesn't take long to figure out, and then you're just running around, spending hours digging. I dug out a whole moon once.
Very Minecraft-esque.
Like, what am I doing? What's wrong with me? I've been at this for like 80 hours. Just digging away a moon. Now there's nothing but some
Our next
frozen
video,
lava or
Chris
something.
digging out a moon.
Yeah, I'm going to
80
Twitch
hours
that.
long. Yeah.
Starbound moon dig.
Non-stop.
Yeah, 80-hour marathon.
See if we can get more hits than the Nyan Cat.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I'm actually doing this now.
Yeah,
so.
he's not doing it.
What else do we have to talk about today?
Maybe we should put the link to that in the doobly-doo.
The Starbound?
Yeah.
Yeah. That is definitely a good use of the doobly-doo though. Should we just beep out here?
So that's it. Yeah, that's pretty much all we have for today. I don't know if there's anything else you guys want to talk about. Next time, we'll talk about our top 10 games in a round 10.
Yes. Yes. You would not believe how many games come in a round 10.
Yeah.
And you would not believe how many of them are called Spot It.
Hey,
Yeah, this is going to be my list because I love Spot It.
I've never even played it, but I love this man's enthusiasm, so...
We're going to play Spot It on our next episode. I'm going to introduce Chris to it, and we'll do it maybe live. No, not live, because he'll mess it up. And
Yeah,
we'll all laugh at him.
I'm still part rig pig.
Yeah, that's true.
I might swear by accident. I went through this whole thing without cussing.
Not once. I'm actually
I'm very
quite
impressed with
yeah.
myself.
Good job.
Yeah, thanks, guys. You're here for me.
Yeah.
So thanks for watching, and I hope to see you soon. No, I say. Thanks for watching. Hope to see you soon.
Why don't we work on that? 3 Red Seal guys.
Why are your arms crossed?
Because we're not really
Fine.
doing it yet.
Red Seal Gamers.
Red Seal Gamers. 3 tradesmen talking about nerdy stuff. We're gonna get punched out on the next job site.
Yeah, that's why we're all laid off.
Yeah.